The Zephyrian fleet emerged from hyperspace like a storm of silver death, their crystalline ships catching Earth's sunlight and scattering it into 1,000 rainbow fragments. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the blue-green planet rotate slowly below them. His forearms moved across the control surfaces with practiced precision, coordinating the largest invasion force the galaxy had ever seen. Such a primitive world, his tactical officer, Yextal, observed through their shared mental link. No orbital defenses, no energy shields protecting their cities. Their technology is barely beyond chemical propulsion. Kethvar's mandibles clicked in what his species considered laughter. The Zephyrians had conquered 43 worlds in the past century. Each one had fallen within days, sometimes hours. The pattern was always the same. Overwhelming technological superiority led to immediate surrender once the locals understood the futility of resistance. "Begin the demonstration," Kethvar commanded. A single pulse cannon fired from the lead destroyer. The beam lanced down through Earth's atmosphere and struck a mountain in what the humans called the Himalayas. The peak simply vanished, turned to superheated plasma that briefly outshone the sun itself. The shockwave rippled across continents, and every human government's seismic equipment registered the impossible energy release. Kethvar activated the planetary communication system. His voice transmitted in every human language simultaneously. "People of Earth, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Zephyrian Empire. You have just witnessed a fraction of our power. We have come to claim your world for the greater glory of our civilization. Surrender now, submit to imperial rule, and your deaths will be swift and painless. Resist, and we will demonstrate why 43 worlds have chosen wisdom over futile defiance." The response came within minutes, transmitted from multiple points across the planet. A single word, repeated in dozens of languages with remarkable consistency. "No." Yextal's confusion rippled through the mental link. "Admiral, they must not understand. Shall we destroy another mountain? Perhaps one of their cities?" Kethvar studied the tactical displays. Something felt wrong. In their database of conquered worlds, no species had ever responded to the initial demonstration with such immediate, universal defiance. Usually there were at least negotiations, pleas for mercy, offers of conditional surrender. "Run a deeper scan of their military capabilities," he ordered. The results were even more puzzling. The humans possessed nuclear weapons, but their delivery systems were laughably primitive. Their space technology was centuries behind Zephyrian standards. Their largest warships were confined to their oceans, propelled by burning fossil fuels. By every metric that mattered, Earth should have surrendered immediately. "Admiral," the communications officer reported, "we're receiving thousands of transmissions from the planet's surface. They appear to be challenges. Challenges? Military units declaring their intention to fight. Civilian populations organizing resistance cells. Some of them are insulting us, sir." Kethvar had never encountered anything like this. On every world they'd conquered, the local military had either surrendered immediately or attempted some form of negotiated withdrawal. No species had ever responded to a demonstration of superior force with anger and defiance. "Show me these transmissions." The holographic display filled with intercepts from around the planet. In underground bunkers, human military leaders were already coordinating defensive strategies. On the internet, civilians shared improvised weapon designs and tactical advice. Children's cartoon characters were being modified to carry anti-aircraft weapons. Humans were turning their entertainment industry into propaganda, their social media into recruitment tools. Most disturbing of all were the historical references. These humans were comparing the Zephyrian invasion to previous conflicts in their history. Something called World War II, battles against beings called Nazis, references to never surrendering, never giving up, never backing down, sir, Yextal ventured. "Perhaps we should proceed with immediate orbital bombardment. These creatures seem unstable." Kethvar studied the intelligence reports flowing in from their deep space reconnaissance drones. Earth's history was a litany of warfare that made even Zephyrian military historians uncomfortable. These humans fought constantly, against each other, against their environment, against any threat they encountered. They had survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, volcanic eruptions that should have ended their civilization, and somehow emerged stronger each time. The first human weapons began firing at the fleet. Primitive missiles with nuclear warheads launched from submarines and hidden installations. The Zephyrian shields absorbed them easily, but Kethavar found himself unsettled by the humans' immediate willingness to use their most destructive weapons. No negotiation, no graduated response, no attempt to minimize casualties. They had gone from first contact to nuclear war in less than 6 hours. Admiral, the humans are broadcasting something called war songs on all frequencies. Should we jam them? Kethavar listened to a sample of the transmissions. Humans singing about fighting to the last breath, about death before dishonor, about taking their enemies with them when they fell. The melodies were strangely beautiful, but the lyrics spoke of a species that viewed death in battle as preferable to submission. He pulled up the Galactic Council's database on Earth. Searching for any previous contact reports, the file was classified at the highest levels, accessible only to fleet commanders. What he found there made his breathing apparatus pause. Earth was listed as a divine interdiction zone. No empire was to approach it. No contact was to be made. The file contained a single note from the Council of Elder Gods dated roughly 1,000 Earth years earlier. Let sleeping demons lie. Sir? Yextel had noticed his admiral's sudden stillness. Kethavar closed the file and looked back at the planet below. The humans were still broadcasting their defiance, still launching their primitive weapons, still refusing to acknowledge the impossibility of their situation. But now he understood why the file existed. These weren't just another primitive species to be conquered. Earth wasn't just another world to be claimed. He was beginning to understand why even gods didn't challenge humanity. But it was too late to retreat now. The invasion fleet was committed, and the humans were already organizing their resistance. The next few days would teach the Zephyrian Empire why some worlds were best left alone. The first wave of Zephyrian ground forces landed in what humans called North America, expecting swift capitulation once their superior technology became apparent. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that defied every tactical manual in their database. Captain Vorthka led his assault unit through the ruins of what the humans called Denver. His soldiers moved in perfect formation, their energy shields deflecting the primitive projectile weapons the humans wielded. The resistance should have collapsed within hours. Instead, it seemed to be growing stronger. These creatures make no sense, his Lieutenant Pexel transmitted. We destroyed their military base, but civilians keep attacking us. They hide in buildings, tunnel through sewers. Coordinate attacks using devices they carry in their pockets. Vorthka's tactical display showed the problem clearly. Standard Zephyrian doctrine assumed that destroying command centers would paralyze enemy forces. But humans seemed to operate without centralized control. Individual civilians were making strategic decisions, forming new units, developing counter-tactics in real time. A massive explosion rocked the street beside them. Vorthka's sensors identified the source. Humans had packed one of their ground vehicles with explosives and driven it directly into a Zephyrian heavy walker. The vehicle's operator had made no attempt to escape. He had deliberately killed himself to destroy a single enemy unit. Lieutenant, are you reading this correctly? That human committed suicide to damage our equipment. Confirmed, sir. We're seeing this behavior pattern across all theaters. Humans are destroying themselves to inflict casualties on our forces. This was unprecedented. In 43 previous conquests, no species had ever used deliberate self-destruction as a standard tactic. The Zephyrian military couldn't comprehend an enemy that valued victory over survival. Admiral Kethavar received hourly reports from his ground commanders, each more disturbing than the last. Humans were converting civilian infrastructure into weapons. Their children were carrying messages through sewers too small for Zephyrian soldiers to follow. Their elderly were conducting surveillance and relaying information to active combatants. But most unsettling were the humans' psychological warfare tactics. They had somehow accessed Zephyrian communication frequencies and were broadcasting what they called music directly into the soldiers' helmet systems. The sounds were chaotic, aggressive, filled with screaming voices and thunderous rhythms that seemed designed to trigger fight-or-flight responses. Sir, his intelligence officer reported, we've analyzed the human music they're transmitting. It appears to be from their historical archives. Songs about fighting invaders, about dying for freedom, about the price of defiance. Kethavar listened to a sample. The humans sang about martyrs and heroes, about fighting impossible odds, about taking their enemies to hell with them when they died. But what disturbed him most was how the song seemed to energize human resistance rather than demoralize them. In the Australian theater, General Kelta was reporting similar anomalies. The humans have deployed what they call guerrilla tactics. They attack our supply lines, disappear into wilderness areas, then resurface to attack again. They seem to view prolonged warfare as entertainment. The intelligence reports painted a picture that made Zephyrian military doctrine obsolete. Humans fought in ways that suggested they had been preparing for this exact scenario their entire evolutionary history. Their entertainment media was filled with stories about fighting impossible odds. Their historical records documented centuries of asymmetric warfare against superior enemies. Most disturbing of all, they seemed to be enjoying themselves. Intercepted human communications revealed soldiers joking about their situation, making bets on how many alien ships they could destroy before dying, and composing what they called memes that mocked Zephyrian technology and tactics. They were treating a life-or-death struggle for survival as some form of recreational activity. "Admiral," Yextal reported, "we're receiving a transmission from the human resistance. They want to negotiate?" The message came from a human who identified himself as Colonel Jack Morrison, speaking from what appeared to be an underground command center. His uniform was torn and bloodied, but his eyes held something that made Kethvar's survival instincts trigger warning signals. "Admiral Kethvar, I assume you're listening. I want to make you an offer. One of my soldiers has an idea that High Command thinks might work, but it's unconventional. We're willing to stop using nuclear weapons if you agree to limit yourselves to ground combat only. No orbital bombardment, no atmospheric attacks, just soldier versus soldier." Kethvar considered the proposal. Nuclear weapons were barely inconveniencing his fleet, but they were irradiating the planet and making resource extraction more difficult. What does humanity gain from this arrangement? The human smile was predatory. "We get to see how tough you really are when you can't hide behind shields and energy weapons. Face to face, warrior to warrior. You are offering to limit our tactical options while gaining nothing in return? Wrong, Admiral. We get to find out if you're actually soldiers or just bullies with fancy guns." The transmission ended, leaving Kethvar staring at his tactical display. The human proposal made no strategic sense. They were offering to restrict their most effective weapons in exchange for forcing the Zephyrians to fight on more equal terms. But something in the human colonel's tone suggested this wasn't a desperate gambit. It sounded like a challenge. "Sir," Yextal said carefully, "surely we cannot consider such a proposal. It would violate every principle of efficient conquest." Kethvar studied the battle reports. Despite overwhelming technological superiority, the Zephyrian invasion was progressing slowly. Casualties were mounting. Entire units were disappearing in urban areas, picked apart by human tactics that seemed designed specifically to counter advanced technology. "Sir, there's something else. Our xenoarchaeology teams have been analyzing human historical sites. The data is concerning." "Explain." "Humans have been fighting continuously for their entire recorded history, not just wars but individual combat, competitive fighting, ritualized violence for entertainment. They have something called martial arts, systematic methods for killing each other using only their bodies." Kethvar felt a chill run through his physiology. "They fight for recreation?" "It appears so, sir. They also engage in something called extreme sports, activities designed to risk death for the sake of excitement. Mountain climbing, deep sea diving, jumping from aircraft with fabric parachutes." The pieces were beginning to form a picture that challenged everything the Zephyrians thought they knew about warfare. Humans didn't just fight when they had to. They fought because they wanted to. They had turned violence into art, struggle into entertainment, survival into a game. And now they were inviting the most advanced military force in the galaxy to play by their rules. Dr. Kexamira had served as xenobiologist for the Zephyrian Empire for over 2 centuries, analyzing conquered species and predicting their behavioral patterns. But her current assignment was keeping her awake during rest cycles, her usually organized mind struggling to process the data streams from Earth. "Admiral, you need to see this," she transmitted to Kethvar, her mental signature tight with confusion. "I've been analyzing human evolutionary history and the patterns are unprecedented. Kethvar materialized in her laboratory via holographic projection. Around them, displays showed thousands of years of human development, archaeological evidence, genetic analysis, and behavioral studies compiled from intercepted human databases. What have you discovered? Sir, humans evolved on a planet that actively tried to kill them. Ice ages, volcanic eruptions, asteroid impacts, mass extinctions. Their world has experienced more catastrophic events than any inhabited planet in our records. But humans didn't just survive these events. They thrived during them. She gestured to a timeline showing human population growth. Look at this. Every time their civilization faced extinction-level events, their population growth actually accelerated afterward. They respond to existential threats by becoming more aggressive, more innovative, more cooperative. Kethvar studied the data. This suggests they view catastrophic challenges as opportunities? Exactly. But it gets worse. Look at their military history. The display shifted to show human warfare through the millennia. Battles, sieges, campaigns that spanned continents and decades. But what made Kexmira's breathing apparatus flutter with anxiety was the progression of human tactical innovation. They don't just fight, Admiral. They study warfare like it's a science. Every conflict teaches them new methods of destruction. They preserve these lessons in what they call military academies and pass them down through generations. She highlighted specific examples. The humans fought a global war less than a century ago that involved every nation on their planet. The casualty numbers are staggering, over 70 million dead. But instead of being traumatized into pacifism, they emerged from this conflict with accelerated technological development and more sophisticated military doctrine. Show me their weapons development. The timeline expanded to display human technological progression, stone tools evolving into metal weapons, gunpowder leading to projectile weapons, chemical explosives growing into nuclear devices. But the pattern that emerged made Kethvar's survival instincts scream warnings. Sir, humans don't just develop weapons for defense. They compete with each other to create better methods of destruction. They call it an arms race, and they treat it like a sporting event. Sporting event? They find it entertaining, Admiral. They write stories about war, create games that simulate combat, produce what they call movies that glorify military conflict. Violence isn't just a tool for them. It's a form of artistic expression. Kexmira pulled up intercepted human entertainment media. Films showing humans fighting impossible odds, video games where players controlled armies, books that detailed military strategies and tactics. The sheer volume was overwhelming. Admiral, they have a concept called science fiction where they imagine fighting wars against alien invaders. They've been mentally preparing for our arrival for decades. Kethvar felt something he had never experienced in 43 previous conquests. Doubt. Show me their current tactical adaptations. The display shifted to real-time intelligence from the invasion zones. In just 72 hours since first contact, humans had reverse-engineered captured Zephyrian equipment, developed countermeasures for energy weapons, and created improvised devices that could disable alien technology using principles their scientists had discovered centuries earlier. Sir, they're not just resisting. They're learning. Every engagement teaches them something new about our capabilities, and they adapt their tactics accordingly. Our technological advantage is diminishing with each battle. But what disturbed Kethvar most was the psychological profile emerging from their analysis. Humans weren't fighting out of desperation or last-ditch survival instinct. They were fighting because this was what they had been preparing for their entire species' history. Dr. Kexmira, show me the classified Galactic Council files on human observation. The records materialized in the display, documenting 1,000 years of covert surveillance. What they revealed explained why the Council of Elder Gods had declared Earth off limits. The gods attempted direct intervention on Earth approximately 1,000 years ago. Kexmira read, initial contact was made with human religious leaders to establish divine authority and guide human development toward peaceful cooperation. What was the result? The humans challenged them to combat, sir. Kethvar's mandibles froze mid-click. They challenged gods? Multiple pantheons attempted contact. Greek, Norse, Celtic, Hindu all reported the same pattern. Humans acknowledged the gods' power, but refused to submit without a fight. They demanded trial by combat, contests of strength, challenges to prove divine authority through victory, rather than demonstration. The historical records painted a picture that no Zephyrian strategist could have anticipated. Humans had looked at beings with power beyond their comprehension and said, essentially, "Prove it." Some gods accepted these challenges, Kexmira continued. The records indicate that humans frequently won. Won? Against gods? Humans apparently possess what they call luck, an ability to achieve victory through improbable circumstances, last-minute reversals, and what their military calls clutch performance. They seem to perform better when the odds are stacked against them. Kethvar studied battle reports from the current invasion. Zephyrian units reported increasingly frequent instances of human forces achieving impossible victories through equipment malfunctions, environmental factors, and tactical innovations that shouldn't have worked but somehow did. Admiral, there's something else. The gods who withdrew from Earth left warnings in the Galactic Council archives. They describe humans as unstoppable when cornered, dangerous when desperate, and impossible to predict when peaceful. What did they mean by that last part? Apparently, sir, humans are most dangerous when they appear to be harmless. Their capacity for violence is greatest when they're living in peace. They spend their non-combat time developing new methods of warfare, training for conflicts that don't exist yet, and preparing for enemies they haven't met. Kexmira pulled up current human-civilian activities during the invasion. Despite facing extinction, humans were sharing tactical information on social media, crowdsourcing weapon designs, and coordinating resistance activities using entertainment platforms. They've turned their entire civilization into a military academy, Admiral. Every human is a potential soldier. Every tool is a potential weapon. Every social interaction is a potential tactical coordination. Kethvar realized why 43 previous conquests had been simple. Every other species fought to survive. Humans fought because fighting was what they were designed to do. They had evolved on a planet that demanded constant struggle, developed a civilization that glorified conflict, and created a culture that viewed warfare as the ultimate test of worth. But the most disturbing revelation was yet to come. Sir, I've been analyzing their religious and philosophical texts. Humans have a concept they call going out with a bang. When facing certain defeat, they don't surrender. They try to inflict maximum damage on their enemies before dying. And if they're facing extinction, then they try to take their enemies with them, sir. All of them. Tactical analyst Zephon had spent her career studying enemy psychology, predicting surrender points and breaking resistance through calculated pressure. But after 4 days of combat with humans, she was requesting reassignment to agricultural worlds. Admiral, I need to report a complete failure of psychological warfare protocols, she transmitted to Kethvar. Her usually confident mental signature fragmented with confusion. We've attempted every demoralization technique in our arsenal. The humans' response has been counterproductive to our objectives. Kethvar materialized in her analysis chamber, surrounded by displays showing human behavioral patterns that made no sense according to Zephyrian understanding of warfare psychology. Explain the anomalies. Sir, we've destroyed their military installations, civilian infrastructure, and communication networks. Standard doctrine predicts this should fragment their command structure and eliminate coordinated resistance. Instead, humans have become more organized. She gestured to intercepts of human communications. They're using something called ham radio, devices that children build as hobbies to coordinate continental defense strategies. Their coordination is improving as we damage their formal systems. The displays showed something unprecedented in Zephyrian military experience. Humans weren't breaking under pressure. They were adapting to it. We've targeted their supply lines, expecting logistical collapse to force surrender. But humans have begun manufacturing weapons and ammunition in garages, basements, and what they call maker spaces. Their industrial capacity is increasing as we destroy their factories. Kethvar studied the production reports. Humans were building anti-aircraft weapons using parts from household appliances, creating explosives from fertilizer and cleaning supplies, forging armor from scavenged materials. Their war economy was becoming more efficient under pressure. Most disturbing, sir, is their psychological response to casualties. We've calculated that human military losses should have triggered surrender protocols days ago. Instead, each casualty seems to increase their determination. Zephon displayed intercepted human communications from battlefield units. Soldiers talking about fallen comrades. Civilians discussing neighbors killed in bombardments. families sharing stories of relatives who died fighting. But instead of the despair and demoralization that Zephyrian models predicted, humans were expressing something their language called rage. Sir, humans appear to view the deaths of their companions as fuel for continued resistance, rather than reason for surrender. They have a concept called vengeance that overrides survival instinct. Show me specific examples. The tactical display filled with recorded human actions that violated every principle of rational warfare. A human unit had lost 60% of its strength in an engagement, but instead of withdrawing, the survivors had launched an immediate counterattack that destroyed a Zephyrian heavy weapons platform. Their tactical communications consisted primarily of screaming, "Admiral." We recorded this transmission from a human pilot whose aircraft was critically damaged. The audio played through the chamber's speakers. "This is Eagle 7 going down. Tell my wife I love her, tell my kids to be proud, and tell the aliens this is for Seattle." The pilot had deliberately crashed his failing aircraft into a Zephyrian supply depot, destroying equipment worth more than his entire city's economic output. Humans perform these self-sacrifice attacks constantly, sir. They call them suicide missions, but they volunteer for them. We have lists of humans requesting permission to die attacking our forces. Kethavar felt his worldview fracturing. They volunteer for certain death? Not just volunteer, sir. They compete for the opportunity. We intercepted a human military communication where soldiers were arguing about who had earned the right to undertake a mission with zero survival probability, but the psychological profile that emerged went beyond simple death-seeking behavior. Zephon's analysis revealed patterns that suggested humans possessed mental frameworks that made them virtually unconquerable. Sir, humans have something they call morale that operates inversely to our predictions. The worse their situation becomes, the better they fight. They have historical examples of military units performing miraculous victories when facing impossible odds. She displayed human historical battles, Thermopylae, Stalingrad, the Alamo, Rorke's Drift. In each case, humans facing vastly superior forces had chosen death before defeat, and their examples had inspired their species for centuries afterward. They've created a culture that worships what they call heroic last stands, Admiral. Dying while fighting hopeless odds isn't seen as tragedy. It's viewed as the highest honor their species can achieve. The analysis deepened into human psychology, revealing cognitive patterns that no Zephyrian strategist had anticipated. Humans possess something called spite, a willingness to accept personal destruction, if it meant denying victory to their enemies. Show me their current strategic planning. The intercepts were terrifying. Human military leaders weren't discussing surrender conditions or negotiation terms. They were calculating how much damage they could inflict before their civilization collapsed, planning scorched earth tactics that would make Earth worthless even if the Zephyrians achieved total victory. Sir, they're preparing to detonate nuclear weapons in their own cities, rather than allow us to capture them intact. They call this denial of assets to the enemy. They would rather rule over radioactive ruins than submit to conquest. But the most disturbing discovery was humanity's relationship with hope. Zephyrian doctrine assumed that destroying hope would eliminate resistance, but humans seem to generate hope from hopelessness itself. Admiral, they have phrases for this phenomenon: never give up, never surrender, death before dishonor. But more than phrases, these concepts appear to be fundamental to their psychology. They cannot be reasoned out of them because they aren't based on logic. Zephon displayed intercepted human religious services, political speeches, and social media posts. Even facing extinction, humans were generating content about ultimate victory, about their children inheriting freedom, about principles worth dying for. They have something called faith. Sir, belief in positive outcomes despite contrary evidence. The worse their situation becomes, the stronger their faith becomes. It's like a psychological immune system that prevents despair. Kethavar reviewed the reports from his ground commanders. Zephyrian forces were requesting reinforcements not because they were losing battles, but because fighting humans was psychologically exhausting. The constant aggression, the refusal to acknowledge defeat, the creative methods of resistance were breaking down Zephyrian morale. Sir, there's one more thing. Humans have been studying us during this conflict. They're learning our psychology as we've been studying theirs. Explain. They've determined that Zephyrians fight efficiently when victory is probable, but become confused when facing irrational resistance, so they're deliberately acting more irrational. The displays showed human tactical communications filled with references to ancient Earth military leaders. What would Patton do? Channel your inner Viking. Remember the Spartans. They were drawing inspiration from thousands of years of warriors who had faced impossible odds. Admiral, I believe humans aren't just fighting this invasion. They're enjoying it. This is the challenge their entire civilization has been preparing for, and they're treating it as the ultimate test of their species' worth. Kethavar realized with growing dread that the Zephyrian Empire wasn't just fighting a primitive species defending their homeworld. They were fighting the descendants of a planet that had spent millions of years creating the perfect warrior race, and those warriors were just getting started. High philosopher Mexander rarely left his research archive aboard the command vessel, but Admiral Kethavar had requested his presence with unprecedented urgency. As the Empire's leading expert on divine entities and cosmic entities, Mexander held clearance for files that most Zephyrians never knew existed. Admiral, you've accessed the God War archives, Mexander observed, his mental signature heavy with concern. These records were sealed for good reason. Around them, holographic displays showed documentation that predated the Zephyrian Empire itself. Records of conflicts between cosmic entities that had shaped the galaxy's current political structure. But the sections highlighted dealt specifically with Earth and its inhabitants. I need to understand what we're facing, Kethavar transmitted. Our invasion is failing, but not in any way our military doctrine can explain. These humans fight like they've been preparing for this exact conflict their entire evolutionary history. Mexander's forearms moved across ancient controls, calling up files that required divine-level authorization to access. Admiral, the God War archives contain testimony from beings whose power makes our technology seem primitive, but they all say the same thing about Earth. Approach with extreme caution. The first testimony came from Ares, the human god of war himself. The recording was over a millennium old, but the entity's presence still radiated power that made the ship's systems fluctuate. I challenged the humans to prove their worthiness as warriors. The divine voice echoed through the chamber. I expected them to kneel to beg for my guidance in combat. Instead, they challenged me to single combat. Not just their greatest warriors, their children, their elders, their farmers and merchants. They all wanted to fight a god. Kethavar's mandibles clicked nervously. What was the outcome? I fought their champion, a human named Achilles. I brought all my divine power to bear, wielded weapons forged in stellar cores, commanded the very essence of warfare itself. The god's voice carried something Kethavar had never heard from a divine entity. Uncertainty. The human won. Mexander pulled up additional testimonies. Zeus, Thor, Shiva, Tyr. Dozens of war gods from different pantheons, all reporting similar experiences. Humans who shouldn't have been able to survive divine presence, much less challenge divine authority, had done exactly that. Show me the Odin files, Kethavar requested. The Norse god's testimony was particularly disturbing. I sought to recruit human warriors for my eternal army. I promised them paradise, endless feasts, eternal combat in my great hall. The humans listened politely, then declined. They said they preferred fighting for their families, their freedoms, their ideas. They found the concept of fighting without purpose to be boring. Gods offering eternal reward and humans refused. It gets worse, Admiral. I observed human warriors in battle, expecting to see crude brutality. Instead, I witnessed tactical innovation that surpassed my own strategic knowledge. Humans fighting hopeless battles while simultaneously developing new methods of warfare. They were teaching themselves to fight gods while actually fighting gods. Mexander accessed deeper files, revealing the incident that had led to the Divine Interdiction Treaty. Admiral, approximately 1,000 years ago, a coalition of gods attempted direct intervention on Earth. They intended to guide human development toward peaceful cooperation and cosmic harmony. What prevented this? The humans declared war on heaven itself. The archival footage showed events that challenged Kethavar's understanding of reality. Human armies using primitive weapons to assault divine strongholds. Mortal warriors somehow damaging immortal entities. Battle tactics that turned divine power against itself. Sir, humans didn't just resist divine authority. They studied it, analyzed it, and developed countermeasures. They treated gods like any other enemy force to be defeated. The most disturbing record came from the Council of Elder Gods' final meeting regarding Earth. Beings whose names were too powerful to speak had gathered to discuss the human problem. These mortals possess something we lack, the recording revealed. They fight not just for survival, but for principles. They value ideas more than existence. They will choose destruction over compromise, death over surrender. They are more dangerous than gods because they have nothing to lose and everything to prove. Kethvar studied tactical analyses prepared by divine strategists. Gods wielding cosmic forces had been outmaneuvered by humans using determination and creativity. Divine immortality had been countered by human willingness to die for their beliefs. Mexander, explain how mortals defeated immortal entities. Admiral, gods fight to maintain their power. Humans fight to prove their worth. When an immortal being who has never faced real defeat meets a mortal who has never truly surrendered, the mortal has the psychological advantage. The archive contained psychological profiles of humanity, prepared by entities whose understanding spanned galaxies. But even cosmic intelligence struggled to comprehend human motivation. Humans possess what the gods termed impossible determination, Mexander read. They can extract victory from defeat, hope from despair, strength from weakness. They fight better when losing than when winning. They become more dangerous as their situation becomes more hopeless. But the revelation that made Kethvar's breathing apparatus seize came from the final divine assessment of humanity. These creatures fight like gods but think like mortals. They possess unlimited ambition constrained by limited lifespans, which makes them more focused than immortals. They know they will die, so they fight as if nothing else matters. Sir, the gods realized that humanity represented an existential threat to divine authority itself. Humans didn't worship power, they challenged it. They didn't seek divine protection, they demanded divine recognition earned through combat. The archives revealed the true reason for the divine interdiction treaty. Gods had withdrawn from Earth not because humans were too primitive to understand divine will, but because humans were too advanced to accept it without question. Admiral, there's one final record you need to see. It's from the unknown entity that exists beyond the rim galaxies. The transmission was barely comprehensible, filled with concepts that strained Zephyrian understanding. But its message was clear. Humans are what gods become when they accept mortality. They are what mortals become when they refuse to accept limitations. They are evolution's answer to the question, what happens when a species refuses to stop fighting? Kethvar realized with crystalline clarity why 43 worlds had surrendered immediately to Zephyrian power. Those species fought to survive. Humans fought to win. The difference was everything. Sir, Mexander said quietly, I believe we haven't invaded a primitive world defended by frightened creatures. We've invaded the training ground where the universe's most dangerous species has been perfecting the art of war for millions of years. Outside the ship, Earth continued its rotation, and on its surface, humans continued fighting with the joy of a species that had finally found a worthy opponent. The invasion was becoming exactly what humans had always wanted, a fight they might actually lose. Admiral Kethvar stood in his command chamber, surrounded by tactical displays that painted a picture of military impossibility. 7 days into the invasion of Earth, the Zephyrian Empire was losing a war against a species that shouldn't have been able to mount effective resistance for 7 hours. Sir, reported Fleet Coordinator Zaleth, I need to present casualty and effectiveness reports. Kethvar braced himself for numbers that defied every strategic model in their database. Zephyrian casualties, 15%, and rising. Human casualties, approximately 40%. However, human combat effectiveness has increased by 30% since the invasion began. Explain how a species becomes more effective as it loses population. Sir, humans appear to process casualties as motivation, rather than attrition. Each death in their ranks generates what they call fighting mad, a psychological state where rational tactical thinking is replaced by creative destruction of enemy assets. The displays showed battlefield footage that Zaleth's analysts had classified as militarily impossible. Human units that had lost most of their equipment were achieving victory ratios that exceeded fresh Zephyrian forces using advanced technology. Admiral, We've documented cases of individual humans destroying entire Zephyrian squadrons using improvised weapons and tactics we've never encountered before. Show me. The footage revealed a human soldier who had lost his weapon, his armor, and most of his unit. Standard military doctrine predicted surrender or retreat. Instead, the human had used debris from destroyed buildings to create a trap that brought down 3 Zephyrian aircraft. When Zephyrian ground forces arrived to investigate, the human had somehow turned their own energy weapons against them. Sir, this individual human eliminated a force that should have required a full battalion to engage. He used our technology, our tactics, and our psychology against us. Then he sent a message to his commanders describing the technique so other humans could replicate it. Kethvar studied the tactical analysis. He developed countermeasures to our military doctrine in real time? Correct, sir. But that's not the concerning part. The concerning part is that he was laughing while he did it. The audio from the engagement played through the chamber. The human soldier was indeed laughing, making what their linguists identified as jokes while systematically destroying superior forces. He seemed to be enjoying the challenge. Admiral, we've identified a pattern in human resistance that our strategists cannot counter. They call it learning curve. The longer we fight them, the better they become at fighting us. Strategic analyst Corthan materialized via holographic projection. His normally composed mental signature radiated something approaching panic. Sir, I've been running probability calculations for successful conquest completion. The models show something unprecedented. Present your analysis. Admiral, in 43 previous conquests, enemy effectiveness decreased over time as casualties mounted and resources were depleted. Standard conquest completion averaged 2.3 days from initial contact. The display showed invasion timelines for previous worlds. Each followed identical patterns. Initial resistance, gradual demoralization, cascading surrender as military units collapsed. Earth's pattern is inverse, sir. Human effectiveness is increasing exponentially. If current trends continue, they will achieve technological parity with our forces within 14 days. By day 21, they will possess tactical superiority. Kethvar felt his worldview collapsing. A species advances 2 centuries of military technology in 3 weeks? Sir, humans aren't developing new technology. They're weaponizing existing technology in ways we never considered possible. They've turned children's toys into communication devices, farming equipment into artillery, entertainment systems into cyber warfare platforms. But the analysis that followed challenged everything Zephyrians understood about warfare itself. Admiral, humans are fighting this invasion like it's a learning exercise. They're treating our military doctrine as a textbook, our tactics as lessons to master, our technology as homework to complete. The strategic displays showed human adaptation patterns that violated every principle of military science. Units that lost engagements were disseminating their failure analysis to other units, who then developed counter-tactics that prevented similar defeats. Sir, humans are teaching themselves to defeat us by studying how we defeat them. Every victory we achieve makes them more dangerous. Communications specialist Vextar added another disturbing dimension to the analysis. Admiral, we've been monitoring human-civilian communications. They're discussing this invasion like it's their planetary final examination. Final examination? They appear to view our invasion as the ultimate test of human worthiness. They're not fighting for survival. They're fighting for grades. The intercepts revealed conversations that made Zephyrian psychologists request reassignment to agricultural worlds. Humans discussing invasion tactics with the enthusiasm usually reserved for recreational activities. Military analysts sharing tactical innovations with the excitement of students solving difficult problems. Sir, they're having fun. But the revelation that shattered Kethavar's strategic confidence came from Deep Space Monitor. Hexroll's report about what was happening beyond Earth's immediate battlefield. Admiral, long-range sensors have detected concerning activity in human space installations. What installations? Intelligence reported no significant space-based infrastructure. Sir, humans apparently have hidden installations throughout their solar system. Monitoring stations, research facilities, resource extraction operations that our initial surveys missed. The tactical display expanded to show the Sol system. Points of light appeared throughout the asteroid belt, around gas giant moons and deep space locations that should have been empty. Sir, humans have been monitoring galactic traffic for decades. They've been watching other species learning about alien technology, preparing for exactly this type of contact. Kethvar stared at the strategic implications. They knew we were coming? Sir, humans have been expecting alien invasion for their entire space age. They've been developing countermeasures for scenarios they imagined, preparing for enemies they'd never met. The files revealed human military exercises called alien invasion simulations, entertainment media depicting space warfare tactics, research programs developing weapons for theoretical extraterrestrial conflicts. Admiral, humans didn't just resist our invasion. They've been rehearsing for it. But the final piece of intelligence made Kethvar realize why the Divine Interdiction Treaty existed, why 43 worlds had surrendered immediately, and why the Zephyrian Empire was about to experience its first military defeat in recorded history. Sir, we've intercepted human strategic communications from their hidden command centers. They're not trying to repel our invasion. Explain. They're trying to capture our technology intact so they can build spacecraft and take the war to our home worlds. The chamber fell silent as the implications became clear. Humans weren't defending their planet. They were using the invasion as an opportunity to acquire the tools needed to invade other planets. Kethvar finally understood why no god challenges humanity. Gods fight to maintain cosmic order. Humans fight to impose their will on the universe. The difference was everything, and the Zephyrian Empire had just discovered it the hard way. Admiral Kethvar stood before the emergency session of the Zephyrian High Command, his mental signature carrying defeat for the first time in his military career. Around him, the greatest strategic minds of the Empire struggled to process reports that challenged their understanding of warfare itself. Honored commanders, Kethvar began, I request immediate cessation of operations against Earth and full withdrawal of Zephyrian forces. The chamber erupted in shocked mental transmissions. Supreme Commander Wex Prime's disbelief resonated through every mind present. Admiral, you're requesting retreat from a primitive world using chemical propulsion and projectile weapons? Sir, we're not fighting a primitive world. We're fighting the universe's apex predator species in their natural environment. Kethvar activated the tactical displays, showing 9 days of combat data that told an impossible story. Zephyrian casualties had reached 28%, while human losses paradoxically translated to increased resistance effectiveness. Commanders, humans have reverse-engineered our energy weapons, developed countermeasures for our defensive systems, and begun manufacturing hybrid technology that combines their innovation with our hardware. Intelligence Director Pexnall transmitted supporting data. Sirs, human engineering capabilities exceed our projections by several orders of magnitude. They've created functional spacecraft using salvaged Zephyrian components and what they call duct tape. Duct tape? Supreme Commander Kelmoth inquired. A primitive, adhesive material that humans have apparently weaponized for spacecraft construction. But the intelligence that followed challenged every assumption about human technological limitations. Sirs, humans have launched successful attacks against our orbital installations using vehicles they built in underground workshops over a period of 6 days. Their spacecraft shouldn't function according to our understanding of physics, but they're somehow achieving tactical victories. War Council leader Yexmander studied the battle reports with growing alarm. Admiral, explain how we're losing tactical engagements to enemy forces using inferior technology. Sir, humans don't accept the concept of inferior technology. They view our equipment as inspiration for improvements. They've enhanced our own weapons beyond their original specifications. The evidence was undeniable. Captured human facilities contained Zephyrian technology that had been modified, improved, and integrated with human innovations in ways that original designers had never considered. Commander, show them the Chicago incident. The tactical replay showed an engagement that violated every principle of military science. A single human unit had destroyed an entire Zephyrian ground division using a combination of stolen alien technology, primitive human engineering, and what their after-action reports called aggressive creativity. Sirs, this engagement began with humans possessing no energy weapons, no aircraft, and no communication equipment. It ended with Zephyrian forces retreating from human positions while requesting emergency reinforcement. How is this possible? Sir, humans have something they call MacGyver syndrome. an ability to create complex military solutions using available materials and improvised techniques. They seem to view resource limitations as intellectual challenges rather than tactical constraints. Supreme Commander Wex Prime demanded deeper analysis. Admiral, present your assessment of human strategic capabilities. Kethvar activated displays that showed intelligence gathered from 9 days of intensive observation. What they revealed was a species that had been preparing for galactic warfare since achieving spaceflight. Sirs, humans have been monitoring galactic communications for decades. They know about other species, other technologies, other worlds. They've been developing theories about alien invasion scenarios and preparing countermeasures accordingly. They've been studying us? Sir, they've been studying everyone. Human databases contain tactical analyses of 47 different alien species, including detailed assessments of our military doctrine. They've been planning this war since before we knew they existed. Strategic Evaluation Director Zolfer transmitted the most disturbing intelligence of all. Commanders, humans have used our invasion as a field test for technologies they've been developing in secret. This wasn't just resistance. It was a military exercise conducted at our expense. The displays showed human research installations that had been hidden from initial surveys, underground laboratories, orbital facilities disguised as space debris, research programs that had been preparing for exactly this type of conflict. Sirs, humans have been waiting for someone to invade them so they could test their readiness for galactic warfare. But the intelligence that convinced Kethvar to recommend immediate withdrawal came from intercepted human strategic communications during the final battles. Show them the Washington transmission. The recording played through the chamber, human military leaders discussing their next phase operations. But instead of defensive planning, they were coordinating offensive strategies against Zephyrian homeworlds. Commanders, humans aren't trying to repel our invasion. They're using it to acquire the technology needed to invade us. The transmission revealed human plans to capture Zephyrian ships intact, reverse engineer interstellar travel technology, and launch counter-invasion fleets targeting the Empire's home systems. Sir, they're planning to take the war to our civilian populations. Supreme Commander Wex Prime's mental signature carried something no Zephyrian leader had experienced since the Empire's founding. Fear, Admiral. Are you saying humans view our invasion as an opportunity for expansion? Sir, humans have been confined to their solar system by technological limitations, not by choice. We've just provided them with the tools needed to reach other worlds. Fleet Coordinator Veltana transmitted the final piece of evidence that sealed the High Command's decision. Sirs, long-range sensors have detected human spacecraft leaving their solar system. They're heading toward inhabited worlds. Whose worlds? Everyone's, sir. They appear to be launching exploratory missions to every inhabited system within 50 light years. The implications crystallized with terrifying clarity. The Zephyrian Empire hadn't just failed to conquer Earth. They had accidentally provided humanity with interstellar travel capability and detailed intelligence about galactic civilization. Commanders, Kethvar concluded, I recommend immediate withdrawal, full diplomatic recognition of human sovereignty, and establishment of non-aggression treaties with all human colonies. Colonies? Sir, humans are already establishing settlements in neighboring systems. They work faster than any species in our records. Supreme Commander Wex Prime made the decision that would reshape galactic politics for millennia. Full retreat authorized. Send diplomatic overtures immediately. And Admiral, sir, make sure our withdrawal looks like we're leaving by choice, not fleeing in terror. But as Zephyrian forces began their strategic withdrawal from Earth, monitoring stations throughout the galaxy detected something that confirmed every cosmic entity's worst fears about humanity. Human ships were launching toward inhabited worlds, carrying crews that viewed the galaxy as their next frontier to explore, understand, and inevitably conquer. The Divine Interdiction Treaty hadn't been about protecting humanity from the galaxy. It had been about protecting the galaxy from humanity. Now the barriers were down, and the universe's most dangerous species was coming to visit their neighbors. Armed with stolen alien technology, thousands of years of combat experience, and an unshakable belief that any challenge could be overcome through sufficient determination and creative violence. The age of human expansion had begun, and every civilization in the galaxy was about to discover why even gods had learned to leave humanity alone. In his final report to the Galactic Council, Admiral Kethvar included a warning that would become the foundation of interstellar diplomatic doctrine. Humanity cannot be conquered, contained, or controlled. They can only be befriended, and even then, only on their terms. Approach with extreme caution, maximum respect, and genuine offers of partnership. Anything less will result in them adding your species to their growing collection of former galactic powers. The invasion of Earth was over. The human invasion of everything else was just beginning.